Welcome to my 4th episode of the Talos Principle. Last episode we went through the 3rd world and collected everything but a single star, which we shall get once we complete all these different levels. For now, let's head over to the 4th level and see how much we can get there.
These worlds, and we within them, are made of words. Hidden words, invisible to you, yet part of all things. We are a story. Your actions give life to the story, and the story gives meaning to your life.
Let's see what he has to say. Looks like they packed up and left for a new place. Good for them. Well, something's going on here, but it's a bit difficult to figure out what. Another bit of text from Stratenos. He seems to disagree with the idea that mankind is the apex of all of creation and that philosophers tend to look for things that make them feel more comfortable than not. Well, if he only lived a few thousand years later, he'd learn humanity isn't even a creation at all. We, like every other living thing on Earth, is a product of biological evolution, and within evolution there is no real apex. It's not a ladder with humanity on top. Anything that is currently alive is, considered the best or the current apex so far. So humans, chimpanzees, bananas, palm trees, cockroaches, we're all alive, so we're the best right now.
Behold, I am Elohim, and I speak unto the darkness, be gone. Excess data cleared.
Kind of wonder if that actually is a glitch occurring within the program, or if that's just Elohim trying to show off his power. But we'll just ignore him for now and get the first sigil. They're all gold pieces. It looks like we have a new mechanic here. You might remember we've unlocked these in the previous episode. These are the sources of beams of light, where you click on the source, then set down the apparatus. By standing in front of it, it blocks away the light to the apparatus here. You don't want to do that because you want to connect these to these endpoints. And of course it takes a few seconds to load up to prevent some very sneaky fast play. Back here you'll notice there's a red one, but no red source. Where, oh where are we supposed to connect these two? Well, I see another one of those crystals up there. So, just for fun, since these things have an incredible range... Oh, and if you lose a range, you'll notice in the center of the screen under Connect, the apparatus is highlighted, but when I move out of range or something's blocking it, it turns gray. I'll just leave that there for now. Who knows what it'll do? And let's explore another place. So last episode I was talking about how robots and AI need to be more intelligent in order to do problem solving. There's one issue that I want to discuss with artificial intelligence and robotics, and that's... Oh, by the way, if you want to pick this up but don't want to lose your connections, right-click. There's one issue we want to discuss, and that's how dependent we'll be on robots and whether or not that'll stifle innovation. Now, some media has touched on this. For example, in WALL-E, humans have become so lazy and dependent on their machines that they've pretty much became incapable of moving on their own. But that's not what I want to discuss today. I want to discuss whether or not it'll stifle space exploration. It's no secret that robots are a lot more convenient when it comes to exploring space, simply because they're a lot less high maintenance. Humans need oxygen, they need food and water, they need room, they need psychological utilities to prevent them from going insane. To accommodate that in space is incredibly difficult, especially since some of those aren't renewable or easily renewable in space. So it makes more sense to send machines over to do all the work that humans are supposed to do, or could do. That's all well and good, especially if we're just trying to get a few data samples on another planet, like go to Mars and mess around with soil and try to figure out its composition. But eventually we will have to leave Earth. This planet isn't going to last forever. In fact, we're eating through its resources at an ever-increasing rate. Hello? Okay then. Just recently, we've passed that threshold of we're consuming more resources than the planet can provide, can replenish. So we do need a planet B. Now, as said before, for most missions in space, it's not that big of a deal sending robots. In fact, it's a lot more efficient because you can send a robot over and just leave it there forever, whether or not it's useful. For humanity, consider some of the missions we do. It would be very impractical for us to send over a person taking months and months to go to Mars, for example, and then to stay there for a few days at most, and then spend months and months sending him back to Earth, all with the safety issues, with all the things that can go wrong along the way. You lose a robot in space. It's expensive, sure, and it sucks, but you don't have the weight of you fucked up so badly someone died because of your ineptitude. That story about a probe crashing onto Mars because scientists in Europe and the United States didn't go over their units of measurement beforehand. That probe cost a few $1 billion, but it would be a lot worse for them if it was a person in there. Machines are expendable, but with how early we are in our quest to go to space, human lives simply aren't. If anyone ever reads this, the trick is seeing the assumption you're making about the mechanics and reassessing them. Good luck. Naming function error. We've cleared out all these areas here, so I'm going to just ramble on a bit and then we'll collect that. As I said before, we can't just sit here indefinitely, until the end of time and just keep sending robots into space. Eventually we'll have to push outward. Robots could be very useful for the initial setup, and even though we'll need to send supplies over to other planets, there's nothing saying we have to send a person over with them every single time. You can send over a bunch of building materials to, like, the moon, and then a bunch of robots, and you can wirelessly control those robots here on Earth to set up a base and set up some of the necessities and preparations, because the moon is only a light second away from Earth, or it takes only a second for light to go from the Earth to the moon. At the absolute worst, sending signals to the moon and back is just a little bit of lag. Unless we find a way to circumvent the speed of light, which this species, being as stubborn as it is, probably will figure out. But until that day comes, it's a lot harder for any other celestial body. It takes 7 minutes for light to go from Earth to Mars. That's one of the big issues with landing probes on Mars in general. Once it starts to enter into the atmosphere, and there's so much that can go wrong, we can't sit there and micromanage everything. It is up to the machine to figure out how to land on its own. Kicking the bird from its nest, whether it's ready or not. But we've gotten better with that. We could still send supplies over, building materials, raw resources, food, but we will eventually have to send people over to assemble them, because it is just not optimal in the least to wait 7 minutes for the robot arm to extend outward, then to make sure that it's able to grasp the material, then 7 minutes to tell it to grasp the material, and then 7 minutes to get it to move the material to a specific place. And of course, that's just us sending the signals over. It takes 7 minutes for it to send the signals back. So it's 14 minutes per action. Reasonably fine if we're just trying to drive around a little rover, but no one wants to spend that long building a base up there. It might actually be faster to spend 3 months sending people over, have them build it over there, and then 3 months hauling them back. But if a robot was capable of reasonable problem solving and had a much higher intelligence than is available in current machines we send to other planets, it might be possible for them to build simple structures over there. Let's say we have a structure that's built a bit like Lego or in Minecraft, block by block. A robot could, with a good visual system and a complex set of parameters, could be able to lift up the individual blocks and set them down where they need to be, like it has a mental image of what the overall structure should look like. However, again, for much more complicated things like setting up electricity, setting up farming, setting up just about anything else other than simple blocks, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get a robot to do that. And while you could train them here on Earth and put them in simulations, it's going to be an entire another game when they're on another planet and you can't just stop them and say, hold on, we need to adjust this. It's not understanding block stacking, we need to fix that. Space, when Star Trek said it's a final frontier, what it was talking about was it's the last unexplored area of the universe. And while that may be true, it's actually the final frontier in another, more difficult way. In the 19th century, when pioneers were heading west, what did they have to worry about? Finding the next pool of water, any natives that might be there and could be hostile to them, any food supplies that they'd have to find, and in general the area might be uncharted or just poorly mapped out. But nonetheless, they're able to stockpile a wagon with supplies for a few months, load up their horses, and be on their way. It would be even easier with today's technology. Just fly overhead, map out the area through satellite, drive over, stockpile on gas. Now imagine doing that same frontier, but you have to bring your own oxygen. There's none over there. You have to bring over your own. And if you plan on staying for a while, you need to figure out a way to make large enough quantities of oxygen to survive on. There's no water over there, at least none that's easily accessible. You have to bring every bit of that too. You don't have to maintain horses or anything, but the entirety of the journey is rife with radiation that'll cook you alive. There's micrometeors that you can't even see, but if they hit you, it's going through you. And once you land, there is nothing there for you immediately. You're not going to quickly find a cave and dig up some resources. It's going to take time and commitment and a whole lot of money before your trip becomes economically viable. truly is the most interesting, dangerous, and probably even the final frontier. Let's see what this has to say.
The answer that came to me again and again was play. Every human society in recorded history has games. We don't just solve problems out of necessity. We do it for fun. Even as adults. Leave a human being alone with a knotted rope, and they will unravel it. Leave a human being alone with blocks, and they will build something. Games are part of what makes us human. We see the world as a mystery, a puzzle, because we've always been a species of problem solvers.
Or leave a person alone in a simulated environment and he'll try to go through it and solve it. And once some of it is solved, he'll ramble on, jumping and running for 15-20 minutes, talking about shit that most people probably don't care about. But play is a very interesting aspect of humanity. It's actually a sign of higher intelligence. The smarter an animal is, the more likely it is to play, and we've observed play in cats and dogs, we've observed it in dolphins, in otters, in octopi. I think we've observed it in crows as well, but I'm not entirely sure of that. In elephants. But to be fair, humans do take it to a whole nother level. We've made entire multi-billion-dollar industries off of play. Our sports games and video games. We enjoy sitting around and solving problems, whether or not it's get from point A to point B, kick the ball to the other side of the field, shoot your way through the bad guys. It would be a very interesting thing if robots were advanced in problem-solving skills and they were eventually able to develop an affinity or a desire to play around. But until then, we've got genetic algorithms that can sort of play some of Super Mario World, and that's it. Genetic algorithms that are just a little bit worse than video game journalists at video games. What a sad display indeed. But we will eventually figure it out, I'm sure. We're learning more and more about the mind and how it works each year. Let's unlock this next asset, and then we'll call it a day. I think these are randomized, but I'm not entirely sure. Toward their general location or not. I haven't been able to find anything definitive on that. Anything you want to say hello, him? Guess not. In the next episode, we will explore level 5, get all the pieces there, and even use a new little asset we've unlocked. Until then, Thanks for watching, and I hope I gave you something to think about.